All right. First one-on-one conversation on the podcast is with an old family friend in Al, Big A Watt. Big A, thanks for coming on and having a chat with me, man. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
No worries, man. We've just been chatting before, catching up a little bit. It's been a few years since we bumped into each other, so it's going to be good to catch up and get a wee chat going. I've got two questions for you to get us going. Question number one is it true that your dad has a souvenir from every ground in Britain? And my second question would be, how did you kind of fall in love with football and especially Aberdeen?
Well, yeah, first of all, my dad, he's certainly been to every ground in Britain, every league ground. He's to all the Scottish, which was 42. 42 just now, but teams go up, teams have gone up and down, or teams have gone out of business, so it's more than 42.
Yeah.
And all the English ones, and he'll have programs and mementos from everywhere he's been. And he tops up if there's a new team comes up like Harrogate or something like that. I don't think he's been able to go there.
Of course.
But he keeps it topping up. He's a member of this thing called the 92 Club.
Right.
And it was only when he joined, it was only 1,000 members. And it's ultra kind of anarchy, and but that was part of what got me into football in a broader sense. Was when he was going to a lot of these grounds, he was taking my brother along as well. So we were going to. I've done almost all the Scottish. I've done about 50 English ones. So
all right.
I've been really privileged to do that growing up, and you just see it's not just the football that you're experiencing. You're experiencing parts of the country that you just wouldn't really go to otherwise. It's the shops around the corner, the different smells and tastes of whether it be in Barnsley or Peterhead or Kilmarnock or wherever it was, and things like finding the ground. He'd always task us with, right, find the floodlights and we'll know where the ground is. And he was a great enthusiast for football and sport in general. But I got into it mainly through him, and because he's from Aberdeen and all of his family is. His dad's side of the family is all from the area, and my gran lived up there. My uncle and aunt dead and do again now. So I was up in the Aberdeen area pretty often as a kid, and always had there was never any doubt about which team I was going to support, and probably ended up supporting them even more passionately than my dad did.
Right.
I think he'd probably admit that. And okay, things have cooled a little bit, and since I've moved here, or probably even before that, really, it still means a lot. But I can get over a defeat pretty much instantly here. Whereas back in my teens and early 20s, it just meant a bit more because your life had less in it, basically.
Yeah, it revolves around it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that's it's funny you say that. I felt the same as that in America too. It was like I was still attached to my team, but like you say, you're almost so far removed from the whole culture of it that you definitely get over things, or you maybe even skip a game, right? Where you would never skip watching a game on the TV or whatever it may be.
There can be time difference issues, I think I find that. Also, the fact that if you lose a game to one of your rivals, let's say we lose to Rangers or Hearts or whatever, I know I'm going to walk out the door. I was not going to bump into any Rangers or Hearts fans.
Yeah.
So if I never bring it up, then no one is ever going to bring it up to me. So it's just it just becomes less of a part of your life, really. It's nice. I know it's nice to keep attached to it. It gives you you have that feeling of still being connected with home, and it's something to chat about with a dad and brother and other mates. and I still commit to the club in certain ways, whether it be there's a kind of membership scheme which I'm part of, and the kind of club TV which I subscribe to. So there's little ways you can still contribute to the club from out here, and I'll always. It doesn't. There was probably a point in my life growing up, especially where we're from in the southeast of Scotland, quite far from Aberdeen. There's not many Aberdeen fans, so most guys anyway would associate me with Aberdeen growing up. So if somebody said, "Oh, who's that guy?" Say, "Oh, the lanky guy who's the Aberdeen fan," they'd know pretty much instantly they were talking about. But it's not such a it's a massive part of my life to date, but in more recent years, it's not.
Yeah, that's
how I identify myself so much these days.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think that I felt like I've kind of what you've been saying is I felt like that obviously being out in the States too, where it wasn't as full on because you're not out at the games or going to the games or at the pub and everything. So I've kind of almost gone the other way where like I've moved back now, and part of me is kind of wanting to really get back into that because I really, really, really missed it. But obviously I'm a little bit younger than you, and I'm still free, still no kids or anything, so I can afford to do that. But I could see that happening as kind of time goes on, that it becomes a bit different for you, which is interesting, but definitely makes sense. How did you what's your thoughts on? We'll kind of just stick with Aberdeen. What's your thoughts on Aberdeen, kind of right now? Like what's your thinking? Because again, I've been so out of the Scottish game for 8 years. I've seen when I've come home at Christmas specific games, but as it has been for a long, long time, it's always Rangers or Celtic, right? That's all you're getting. So, what's your thoughts right now on Aberdeen? Just because I see a lot of chat about Derek McInnes, so I just wondering kind of where they're going.
Well, I mean, first of all, I go back since McInnes took over, which was 2013. We had quick success, won a trophy in his first year, which was the first time we'd won one for almost 20 years.
Right.
And suddenly there was a good, clear style of play in place. He'd made good signings, and obviously Rangers were out of the picture at the time, and that season Hibs and Hearts both got relegated.
Yeah.
So it was boom time. It should have been boom time for us. Three biggest clubs in the country were not even in the same league the next season. And at that time, Celtic also appointed Dyla, who had a mixed reign at Celtic. They certainly they're probably weaker now than then, but they've certainly compared to Rodgers' period where they were literally invincible. Dyla's Celtic could be got at, and I feel that was those 2 seasons were a huge missed opportunity for us for possibly winning the league, and certainly winning other trophies. Teams like Inverness, St Johnstone, they won cups at that time.
Yeah.
And as the years have gone by and Rangers have come back into it, and now very strong this season, and we've kind of gone the other way, and it feels to me as though he's been good overall, but it was a missed opportunity in his good years where I thought he was doing a great job, but just there will always be a sense of regret about that period. And then the last two years or so, it's been absolutely dire to watch. Just about getting results, but I'm not sure how we're fourth in the table, because I can't think of many games I've watched this season where we've been anything other than really grim to watch. I think he's the second longest serving manager in Scotland. He's been there for 8 years now, and that's a long time for a manager anywhere. And it just comes a point where things just get a bit stale. I feel like he's not. I don't think he's going to be able to turn it round. he's been fortunate that Hearts have also, got relegated as well. So, and Dundee United have only just come back into the top flight. So these would be traditional rivals for third and fourth European spots. So you basically just got Hibs competing against, and they've not been that happy with their manager at times this season too. So it feels like he's run his course. And the best thing would have been had he gone to a decent job down south. He goes with the best wishes. We get weighed in financially and we can start afresh. But now it feels like it's just going to drag on and on. Because we can't really afford to pay him off. He's on a big contract. And nobody's going to come in and take him because his recent record
is poor.
He's already been down south of Bristol City, so his stock isn't that high there. The only other clubs in Scotland that would be bigger would be Celtic and Rangers. I mean, Hearts would be similar level, but he's not going to go there, or Hibs. So there's just nowhere for him to go. So he's going to hang on in there until it gets so bad that he gets sacked, which would probably mean going into the bottom six, which is not going to happen this season. It might happen next season, the way we're playing and the way we're trimming down the squad pretty significantly. Lost McKenna, lost Cosgrove, and shoring things up with loan signings and that kind of thing. So I'm pretty apathetic at the moment. It's just, you're watching it. It's bad enough without the crowds.
It's terrible.
Up for it without that. Although, to be fair, it doesn't change the atmosphere too much, a lot of our home games. But yeah, just a bit.
Why do you think why do you think that at the time, you said, Hearts were out and Rangers were out and there was just Celtic, and I understand the money side of the game, and I get that they have a lot more money than Aberdeen will, but why do you think there wasn't an opportunity, or why do you think that, maybe not even Aberdeen, why do you think no one else was maybe even able to pit them, or is it as simple as the money?
Well, that's obviously a big part, but there were two seasons. The first was 14-15, and that's when all three, Hibs, Hearts and Rangers, were all out of the league. And that season, I would say our main problem was games against Celtic. If I remember rightly, I think they won all 4 of the matches against us that season.
Right.
So I think that was probably the key in that campaign. The following season, we had a better record against Celtic. We beat them twice at home. I was at one of those games. Fortunately, I was back for a wedding, and that was fantastic. One of my best experiences at Pittodrie. And
class.
Yeah, it was around early February. I think we were joint top or something like that, and it was proper. It was proper tight. You felt, this could really happen, and that you still felt there was a chance until, I don't know, middle of March or something. Then we lost a few. We probably didn't invest. Whether we had the money to do so, maybe we didn't. But we were trying to get away with pretty questionable defence at times. Ash Taylor, we lost the goalkeeper Danny Ward, who we had on loan from Liverpool at the time.
Yeah. Danny Ward's from Liverpool.
He was fantastic for us, and then he got recalled, and they sent him out to an English Championship club instead.
Huddersfield.
Aye. Then we attempted to get away with what was his name? Scott Brown, I think, was the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
It was
murder.
It was a huge climb down in quality, and those were factors, and it just.
Do you think
lost games that we really shouldn't have, and just 3 games away from leading positions, and it was probably a little bit of bottle, but also comes down, the gap between Aberdeen and Celtic is much bigger than the gap between Aberdeen and, let's say, a Motherwell or at the time a Dundee or something like that.
Well, and like we'll get into the Scottish football kind of stuff in general as a bit, but what do you think that from looking on the outside in, then for Aberdeen, obviously, like you say, maybe being a little bit less emotionally attached to it because you're away from it. What from the outside in? First of all, are you kind of thinking that, not for any other reason than it's ran its course, that maybe it's time for McInnes to go? And who would you maybe like to see be given that opportunity if you think it is time for McInnes to maybe go in to freshen things up?
Well, I think it is. I think it's it's definitely run its course, but
Mm.
I wouldn't pay over the odds to sack him at this point in time when we're clearly financially we've got to be very careful. Not we're going to lose losing month after month of gate receipts and stuff like that, and all the other match day revenues. And what are we really chasing? I mean, we're chasing what, third or fourth.
Mm.
We might still manage that. Excuse me.
Yeah.
With McInnes. So I think we're stuck with him for now, and it has to get really bad for him to
be let go.
Walk away. But yeah, I'd be in favour of changing in terms of a replacement. Really don't know. I think Martindale is interesting. He's had a couple of poor results there, but he's one that would interest me. Jim Goodwin, I think, is doing a good job at St Mirren. Like his attitude. I think those would probably be I don't think we would appoint Martindale. I think his baggage would be probably too much for a club like Aberdeen, rightly or wrongly. I would have no issue whatsoever with him being the.
That's Livingston manager, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But whether Aberdeen would stand for that, I'm not sure.
Right.
Goodwin, yeah, I'd be happy with him. Although I'd be terrified of an appointment like a kind of nostalgic appointment like Strachan or McLeish. But I think both of them are probably just past the point where they would take it.
I wonder. I mean, no disrespect, and again, not of my time as players. Those guys like Strachan and McLeish, but know them well as managers. But and again, I mean no disrespect, because I've obviously not got anywhere close to them. But you just, like you say, you just feel like those guys, and there's loads of them in the Prem that still get it. You know what I mean? Those types of jobs. You just kind of feel like football's kind of, past those guys a little bit. It's not that they're wrong. When you hear when I hear like someone like Strachan talk, I think he speaks incredible about football, but he's just not a modern day football manager, probably. You know what I mean? And there's loads of those guys. But
Strachan, when he was in Scotland, the Scotland manager, there was just an attitude about him that just really, really irked me, especially after a year or so when things started to go south. There was a real stubbornness about him, which is fine when it works, but it was getting to a point where it didn't really. And he was things like pretty reluctant to pick John McGinn at an early stage. Basically, if there was any player where there was like a clamour from the press or the fans to pick the player, he wouldn't. He would try and do his own things. He'd throw in kind of wild card, picks for his starting lineups.
I remember that.
And a lot of them didn't work out. He would point to the last year in charge, we were unbeaten. But the damage had been, long done before that.
Aye.
I just really went off track, and I speak to Celtic fans, a lot of Celtic fans about the time there. Then they couldn't go him at all, even though his record there on paper was actually pretty good. There was a phrase that they came up with, Strachanized, which was basically players. I think a particular one was Hartley.
Right.
Just referred to players kind of just. Initially being quite exciting and then just regressing down to kind of nuts and bolts players. But
do you think, like, I feel almost as if you mentioned the Scotland thing, And I know that Steve Clarke's got us to the Euros, and it's fantastic, and it's great, and hopefully it goes ahead, and even better, hopefully some fans are able to go to it. I don't know if that'll happen, but there's what you mentioned with Strachan about picking the team. I've felt like that for a long, long time, probably for as long as I can remember with Scotland, is we just don't seem to pick what seem to be the obvious choices sometimes in our players or our formation or our shape, or give people opportunities. Because I look at how we're playing in Scotland right now, and don't get me wrong, it's working to a point because we've got to the Euros, but I still think I think you could do a little bit more with that team, and I think there's players in that team, like you mentioned, John McGinn, who has gone down to Aston Villa. I remember when he rejected Celtic and the abuse he was getting from that, and I mean, he's been proven a million times over right from his decision. But yeah, I don't know. I still feel like there's, as well as Steve Clarke has done, I'm concerned that it's a real good opportunity for Scotland in the long term to build something. But I'm still thinking we're going through the same mistakes as what you just mentioned, maybe with Strachan. I still think that's going to happen with Scotland.
Well, no, I've got faith in Clarke. I think he's doing a good job. There are areas where we are totally impoverished, and he's had to, put players a bit out of position. McTominay and Tierney being part of the back three, when those two have been, among the best players in the English top flight.
Yeah.
Where they're both playing out of position for Scotland, because otherwise you're going to have three suspect centre halves.
Yes.
Instead of one. We can probably get away with one.
Yeah.
Right back, I mean, O'Donnell, I think he's given everything he can, but there's going to be games where he's going to be completely terrorised by by decent forwards, decent wingers.
Oh yeah.
Other areas we don't really have much up front. Dykes has been a revelation of a find so far, but I don't know. Could he get more out of it? Possibly, but I think most of our best players are in similar areas of the pitch. So you'd like to have Jack, McGinn, Armstrong, Inform, McGregor, Christie, Fraser, Forrest. You can't play all of those. So
no, you can't. Yeah,
you have to.
Yeah,
and I think he's probably found a system now that might not suit Forrest when he comes back. Where previously he was our best player for a spell.
He was very good.
I'm not really sure where he'd fit in the team now. So I don't know. I think it's a tough job, but at least he's got the Scotland supporters are back on side. I'm looking forward to Scotland games now.
Yeah.
Much more so than club games, and it's that came out at a good time. That the win in Serbia was a huge boost for the morale of the country, and I'm pretty hopeful with him, and I don't know where we turn after Clarke anyway. I don't think you keep spinning the wheel with managers. If he was, if we mess up the World Cup qualifiers, as long as he wants to stay there, I just keep him on. I think he's got. I think he's just terrific at the job, and if he can't work it out, then I don't think the successor would do any better. So
I think you're pretty right in what you said. Like, when you talk about all the players that you probably want to have play, they all are almost in the same position, right? They're all almost in the middle of the park, and you can't have all those guys play. It doesn't work. It's going to be far too unbalanced. So he's looked at it and thought, how do I want to play? Who best fits that? And that's how I'm going to stick with it. And I agree with you. I think that you could see when we won it, there's a big change. And I just think I said this before on the second one of these we did when I had my Uncle Glenn on to talk about it, is that it's great to celebrate it and be a part of it, and let's enjoy it 100%. But there's an opportunity here for Scotland as a whole, right, from a football side of things, to finally maybe start getting things going. So over the next 10 years or so, and for the future, we continue to qualify for these tournaments and progress, because Scotland is known as there's players here. It's the culture we have, it's a setup we have, but there's a way to do it for sure. And I just think that's my biggest thing, is I want to make sure that as a nation we make sure we capitalize on that. So I think
Yeah,
we have to.
I think we're since the Euros have been expanded to 24 from 16. I think it's pretty much inexcusable not
Yes,
to qualify for those. World Cups are going to be a stretch.
of course.
We couldn't have had a kinder group for the next one. This is looks a good opportunity to me, but we pretty much need to win the group to qualify. The playoff, you get a playoff spot for second, but then you need to win. You need to win 2 ties to get through after that. So you're asking a lot. Realistically, yeah, if we can qualify for every Euros and fluke a World Cup every 12, 16 years, that would do me. And at the Euros, who knows? I mean, when you get into this format, it doesn't take that much to get into the knockout stage, as we saw last time. Usually just one win and maybe a draw. Sometimes just the win will do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
what do you think's been? What's like the biggest difference for you up until now, from when I feel like when you were younger, certainly maybe like early teens, maybe even a little bit before that, but I feel like there was a different feel about the Scotland national team than there probably has been in the last 15 years up until this point now. Like, do you think that's just because we haven't been qualifying and it's just not, it's kind of petered out? Clubs kind of gone above, I'd say, the national team probably in most places in the world now. But I'm just interested to know what your thoughts are on how it's changed, or do you think it hasn't?
Well, I mean, I remember I first started getting into football when I was 7. So my first tournament was Euro 92, which Scotland were at. There was only 8 teams, and I remember the qualifying campaign for that as well. Some of the matches, and I'm 7 years old. That was incredibly exciting. These like summer, watching football in the summer in the evenings, and it was a good tournament all in all. Denmark won, which was a shock, and you had a great Germany team, a great Dutch team. England got papped out by Sweden, which was good, and Scotland performed well. We lost to Germany and Holland, but they were narrow defeats. Played reasonably well, and beat what was effectively Russia, but the CIS or the Soviet. I suppose it was kind of in between the Soviet Union and Russia. There was a Georgian guy who played for them. When we didn't qualify for World Cup 94, I mean, that was like a total disgrace. They called it, there was a defeat to Portugal. We lost 5-0.
Right.
And at this time, Portugal weren't a great side at the time. They weren't qualifying for tournaments regularly.
Okay.
They pumped us 5-0, and that was described as the night a team died. So that felt like a proper,
big blow.
Proper downfall. So that's, so usually we're getting, you knew what the disappointment was like. We thought at that point that was going to be a bit of a one-off and we'll get it back together. And sure enough, made Euro 96, did all right there. Made the World Cup 98, we're poor there. And then we were very close to making Euro 2000. We had the playoff with England.
Yep.
And since then you could tell things. Craig Brown was the manager. And he was very, very loyal to his players, and they were loyal to him. But it got to a point where, the guy, when Vokes took over, he really did have to start from scratch. Now, people took the piss out of him for some of his selections. They said it was like jury duty, but he didn't have much choice, really. He didn't have a great deal to work with, and part of that was because Brown held on too long to the old guard. Didn't let younger guys come in, but Vokes got the first caps for Fletcher, McFadden, and the Vokes era was pretty dire. But there was an upsurge again in the Euro 2008 campaign where we very nearly qualified. We beat France twice. we lost to Italy on that day. And that the atmospheres at the games at that time were the best I remember going to Scotland games anyway.
Class, man. I've never
electric, and
never been.
it was tough, even if it was against somebody like Georgia were in our group. Getting a ticket for that was it wasn't that easy. You guaranteed a full house, 50 odd thousand, and even in before COVID hit, we were the gates we were getting for games were pathetic. I think the game against Aberdeen we had about 17,000.
Yeah.
So you could have played that at like Rugby Park or Easter Road, but as a separate point, I feel I'm glad that things have revived now.
Yes.
But for a while, I got the feeling that with this, maybe going a little bit too political, but when the independence referendum came round, then suddenly there was obviously a bit of a divide in the country, and I think there's a lot of fans were put off being associated with the Tartan Army because obviously that we considers
of the independence thing.
Pro-independence. I think Scotland support suffered from that. Even though a lot of people who Scotland fans would have voted no as well, but I think there was a bit of a split there.
That would make sense.
And maybe now we're just starting. I think it still is. The UK is a very divided place at the moment. As well, but Scotland is. I think Scotland lost a bit of its, backing in that time. But hopefully that can be put to one side, and I think everybody will be getting right behind them. And in the Euros and the World Cup qualifiers as well, and hopefully my theory is wrong. Certain people will take the piss out of me for that, for thinking that has been the case, but I'm pretty sure it is, because there are games where we were struggling to get good crowds against your Slovakias, Slovenias, stuff like that, which were key games. We had a good chance to qualify out of that. Yeah. And definitely 10 years before, even with a poorer side, it was a poorer side. Walter Smith and Alex McLeish did a brilliant job with limited resources there, and we were struggling to get people in the door. So
I think whether I agree or disagree, I think politics plays a part massively. It's part of the culture of the country, right? So where you're going through as a country is going to have an impact on the sport, and especially the national team. So I don't think you're too wrong on that, man, to be honest with you. I wanted to ask you about this, about kind of like what you've done personally for kind of still, I know you said you're not doing it anymore, but kind of still pursuing a career somewhat in football, right? Through some sort of journalism that you did. So I just kind of wanted to ask you about, like, what did you do after school and uni to kind of get to the point where you're at living in Georgia? Because I think that a lot of people that like football, that maybe want to grow up to be a pro football player, which is extremely difficult to do, kind of only maybe see that as a path, or maybe see being a coach as a path. So I just think it's good that there's other ways to go about and still live in football, and you kind of went away and done that. So I just kind of wanted to know what you did and kind of how you found it.
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say I've only ever done any sort of football writing as a hobby,
right?
Paid hobby, not well paid, but just a kind of side, a side thing. So I don't want to give the impression that I've
made a full career,
football journalist. That has not been the case. But when I've did cover games for an agency in Scotland for a few years. University got me in touch, and so I used to go to. First game I did was like Alloa, Peterhead, and yeah, it was great. I mean, obviously, I always loved my football, and had to write a little piece on that, interviewing managers after, and doing the stats, phoning in the phoning in the goals and to like the press association and stuff like that. So basically, I'm the guy. Well, for some games, I would be the guy who was basically responsible for that score coming up at the bottom of your Soccer Saturday.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
That's how it worked then. I don't know if it still
cool.
works like that. There'd be one guy who'd be working for the press association at the game.
No, it does. It does, because I've been looking for work, and there's a thing where you do that, and the scores come up. So it definitely does the work like that.
Yeah, and so no, that I got to cover a couple of Aberdeen games, which was a treat. And I was getting my work in all sorts of papers, ranging from the Times down to Sunday Post, and covered some great games. And yeah, it was fun. I never really considered it was ever going to make a living out of it. Even back then, it's got much harder to do that now. And I never really had that ambition from the outset. I don't think. I think you have to be incredibly determined. You have to be able to establish good connections, and yeah, I mean the opportunities are dwindling year on year for journalists, and now you need to probably have a wider skill set. You probably need to
degrees and shit,
photojournalism, vlogs, all that kind of stuff. So podcasts like this as well. So people have to build a bit of a kind of empire to make it these days. And I listen to a lot of these. I listen to The Terrace. I listen to Graham Spears' podcast. Listen to Hawksby and Jacobs and all these kind of things.
Aye.
And, I loved doing it. When I moved it to Georgia in 2010, I mean, that wasn't related to writing about football or anything, but that was one of the things I could do when I first came here, when I was just scratching around for work to get started. The English language newspaper here, they didn't have a sports guy, so Georgia are playing Israel, I think it was, in the first qualifier. Do you mind if you sort me out with a press pass? I'll go along. And they're like, oh God, yeah, absolutely. I mean, paid absolute peanuts, but it was a great experience. I didn't feel like I was, making it or anything like that.
Yeah,
it was just a treat. It was just a treat to go and sit in the press box, good seat. You're writing about the game. You're filing your report after, asking, interviewing managers after and stuff like that. It was great. It was just great fun. And the pinnacle for me, it makes it sound far grander than it was. Basically, I just had a good excuse to go to Georgia matches and write on them, and later on I would tweet about them when that became a thing. And yeah, I know I became something of an authority on Georgian football for a while, and pretty high level journalists would contact me before a certain international team would come here, whether it be the French or the Irish or whatever. And obviously when Scotland played here, that was a real treat. It was good to meet a few of the hacks that were out for that game, and that was just a massive all round. Although the best was probably when the Super Cup, the UEFA Super Cup, was played here in 2015. It was Barcelona against Sevilla.
Oh yeah,
Managed to. It was a rigmarole, but managed to get a pass for that through UEFA, and Barcelona 5-4. One of the best games I've been to. Pedro scored the winner in the extra time. But
I remember that game now. Yeah.
That was a real kind of festival feel to it, and
that's class.
I remember being at that and thinking, this is great. This is just. It was just just a treat as well.
Yes.
By then I had one son, and soon I had a second. And after a while, it becomes harder and harder to justify, spending 4 or 5 hours, what it might take, go into the game pre-match, then afterwards maybe getting a bit of food afterwards as well. You start, is this? I'm maybe not got that much social time now. Is this the best? Yeah. Just the best use of my time for what is pretty much kind of token money return. So eventually, I still go to but now I went back to going to games with mates now. It's a better way.
Class.
It was before the COVID, so I don't know. I might go back to it. might reassess things a little bit. It does give me a little outlet, something different to
For
do.
sure. An excuse to go to the football.
Yeah, I spend my days editing and proofreading all kinds of texts, all kinds of academic papers and reports and all this kind of stuff. So I mean that was a good business decision, and that's going really well. And
good.
We've actually had our best year ever during the pandemic. But I still wouldn't mind a little additional outlet. And although covering Georgia is not always been that thrilling.
Right. Have you?
Well, there's been a couple. The best for them was they beat Croatia, a last minute winner. That was my first year when I was out here. At that point, it looked like they had a wee sniff of getting to the Euros. It didn't materialise. But when they're crazy about their football. But they've fallen out of love with their national team, and they turn on their national team very quickly if things are not going right, because they did have great players in the Soviet days in the 80s. A lot of the Soviet Union team was made up of Georgians. Dinamo Tbilisi won the Winners' Cup in '81. So they've grown up with all these stories, or some of them experienced them, and they just feel a bit let down with.
They're not getting the great moments. Yeah.
What Georgia's produced on its own as a football nation, and it's a shame. A shame. We'll see if there's a few promising young players, as far as I'm aware. I've lost touch a little bit, but I still watch all the games, whether I go or obviously recently I've just watched them on the telly, and they've got enough to, as Scotland found out, they've got enough to do damage to stronger teams on their day, but probably not enough to sustain it for a whole campaign. So, and as long as this Nations League thing keeps going, that will be. I mean, they really blew a huge chance here. The same night that Scotland beat Serbia. Before that, Georgia were playing North Macedonia.
Yeah.
And they lost 1-0 here, which is a real sickener, because if they won that, they were at the Euros, and that would have been the first time ever. That felt like just a real. I was talking about Aberdeen's missed opportunities, which were pretty bad, but at least we can look back to some, spells of glory and slightly before my time. But for the Georgians as an independent nation, this would have just been huge, such a huge lift, and also just like Scotland or any country during the pandemic, it would have given a great morale boost to the people as well. So I really felt for them that night. I think the players just froze, really.
It happens on the big occasions. It happens. Have you had a chance to watch in terms of the leagues, the Georgian leagues and stuff? Like, do you watch that? Do you cover those games? Did you cover those games at all, or no?
No, I never had much interest in the league matches. I mean, I went to a few now and then, but I think that would be more interesting. I mean, I've got a map of Georgia behind me there.
Yeah.
So if you get further towards the big blue thing on the side, which is the Black Sea, people I think are a bit more passionate about the game, or certainly about their local clubs over there, and just everywhere outside the capital. People in the capital are a bit half-arsed about their about league football anyway. When it gets to European games, they can get decent crowds. I mean, the first year I was here, Dinamo, and I love going to see the Georgian teams play in Europe. And usually, because most of the grounds in the country are not suitable for playing these matches, they have to play them in Tbilisi. So you've got teams travelling 3-4 hours from where they're actually based to come and play their matches in Tbilisi. So it's great for me. So I'm getting like a couple of matches a week, and they've held their own. I've seen some great games here. I saw Dinamo play AEK Athens the first year I was here, and I think there was about 45,000 in the game, and the place was absolutely bouncing. They scored early, made it 1-1, went to extra time, and then I think it was Good Johnson actually. Either won the penalty or scored the penalty. He was definitely playing, and then that was another big letdown, because that would have been group stage football and another 3 games here.
Yeah,
European nights are are terrific here. I really enjoy those.
Class.
I'll get it. The weather's glorious in the summer here, just guaranteed.
Mm.
Exceptional heat.
Quality. Do
So those
you
are good nights.
do you like what I mean? I know you've kind of said you haven't watched a lot of it, so maybe it's an unfair question, but from the games you have watched, and it's okay if you say you can't really say, but what would you say? What is there a difference there between the Scottish level or the English level that we get here? I mean, is it? Don't know. I don't like using the word worse because I always think that every country and culture it's just different. But I mean, how does it compare? Would you say from what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen enough through the years to make a comparison. I think I'd be qualified to do that. And when my dad comes over, we'll usually catch a game or two or three.
Class.
And, I think the general, there's different stages because you've got Dinamo are the big club, and in terms of resources, they have much more than the other clubs. They don't always put it to good use.
Okay.
They don't always win the league. It's not a total monopoly. But they would, and to put it this way, Aberdeen played Chikura Sachkeri, which is I think they'd finished about 4th in the Georgian League the season before. We played them out here, finished 1-1. I don't think we weren't really ready for the game, I didn't think. And then we back at Pittodrie, beat them 5-0, very comfortable. And I think, based on that, but I think if Aberdeen had played Dinamo, who were the top team,
okay,
they could have been tight. So I think overall, I would say the league is somewhere around probably about Scottish Championship.
Okay, all right.
Scottish Championship, but maybe with a team in there that shouldn't really be there, a la Hearts or a Rangers or something. So I'd say about that level. English, in terms of English, I don't know where I would be these days. Probably talking League One.
Okay,
something like that.
Interesting. No, it's something that I'm wanting to somehow do that I feel like I've missed out on. Like I said at the start, is I've never really pursued the coaching so young that I never had the experiences of being able to, certainly over here, the culture of it in America is just it's different. It's not the same as here. So I never had the experiences of going to all these games and certainly going to places in Europe to either follow your team or just to go to random games. So it's just interesting to know because I've never done it, and all you get here now. I mean, you don't even get. I don't know when the last time you were here for a while was, man, but you get no Scottish football. I mean, you get the Rangers and Celtic games, and you get Sports Scene, which is great, and they do good analysis, but you don't get to see it. You just don't get to see it, and it's a shame because I think that the game isn't as bad as people kind of make out it is, to be honest with you. I think it's got a lot of parts of football in Scotland that England's actually missing, and the way that the English Premier League's gone, with the money and the TV packaging, there's a lot of good to that, but I think it's lost a bit of its soul, and I still think that Scottish football has that bit, from the games.
Well, I
I've
totally
watched
agree,
so far.
and that's what I still like about Scottish football. I love about Scottish football is the kind of community thing, and you've seen that during the pandemic. I'm sure English clubs have done it as well, but
of course,
it just there is just more of an attachment, I think, between the people and the players, largely because they're not earning. In some cases, they won't even be earning more than your punters in the stands.
Massively.
Top flight and Hearts. Most guys playing football in Scotland are just getting an average wage, so that, they're not big time Charlies or anything like that. There is still that.
They're not celebs. They're not celebrities. Like
no.
the English players have almost become celebs. They've got millions of followers on Instagram and all that now. Yeah. Like they're celebrities.
Yeah, I think what I love about Scottish football is it just doesn't. I mean, I listen to Off the Ball all the time, and it just doesn't take itself too seriously. Which I don't think you could say that about English football. And so I love going to all these grounds, and I can't wait to take my sons to around the Scottish grounds.
That'd be brilliant.
That'll be a real treat as well. And,
Oh yeah.
And yeah, just going to these because some of these are just great days out, and and you get all over the country, and it's a great way to see the country. And who knows what kind of game you're gonna stumble into as well.
No.
I've seen a few absolute howlers, 0-0s and that, but you've also seen some incredible matches where you would least expect it. And
yeah,
I remember going to. A few of us went to Stirling Albion against Morton around Christmas time. This was about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
And we did the hospitality stuff. We just got a Christmas treat for ourselves. And it was an incredible game of football. Stirling were 3-1 up, and the Morton fans were baying for blood. They were wanting Jim Duffy was the manager, wanting him sacked and all this kind of stuff. And then started coming back 3-2, 3-3, then 3-4, and then Morton got a penalty in the last minute to make it 5-3. But the keeper saved it, and I say the keeper saved it. It was an outfield player because the keeper had just been sent off and given away the penalty, and he saved.
I remember this game, man. Yeah.
Saved his ball kick. I think it's on YouTube, and even to this, I mean that's we didn't go there with any expectation of
course,
a great game of football. We thought we'll have a good day out, we'll have a few beers, we'll have a scran, mingle with the locals.
Yes.
And we might get a half decent game. I'll have a good laugh,
and
it turned out to be one of the best games I've been to, and I must have been to hundreds.
Class, man.
That's what I do love. I love going to games, always have done, and especially going to new grounds. And we started doing that recently, meeting up with a few of the old mates, and we met up at a kind of neutral venue. It was Prague, and then it was Milan last year.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that tradition's had to be, put on the back burner this year. But hopefully,
you get back to it.
Revive that when we're able to do so. And
how was the San Siro?
I miss.
Yeah. Sorry. Carry on. Finish your point, and then
I do miss going to games. I mean, if I was back in Scotland, I wouldn't go every week, and I wouldn't go and see Aberdeen every week.
Yeah.
I would catch, if Aberdeen were playing in the Central Belt, let's say if I was living in the Edinburgh area, I'd go to probably most of our away games, some of our away games around there. I would pick and choose, but I would go to football maybe every couple of weeks, and I would take in a Wraith Rovers or a St Mirren or Ayr or whatever, Montrose. I would take a wee expedition.
That's what I want to do, man. I want to do that. I've been speaking to my Uncle Glenn about it, and there's like you say, there's it's not just the game. It's the day out that plays a big part in it. So the
games. I mean, sometimes like the game I described there was incredible, but
yes,
most of the time you accept that the game is just
oh yeah.
It's the reason to be there, and not a lot else. It shouldn't be the absolute everything, because then you're setting yourself up for a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah,
your day needs to have a bit more to it than that.
Of course,
right. If there's a journey involved, so you're going to meet on the train or whatever. It's just something that I do miss a lot, and.
Big part of football, man, is doing that.
That's much more. All of that, all the areas that surround the grounds.
Yeah.
Obviously the pubs and stuff like that. But, shops, takeaways, parks, and it's just that's what I love about football, is it brings you into contact with so much more than just because the game itself, I can sit and chat, and I can watch plenty of games, and we can chat about who's a good centre half, or who Arsenal should sign, or should he get a game for Scotland or whatever. But that can be a bit limited. But when you start talking about football in the broader sense, and all the heritage all the clubs have, and all these amazing stories that go with their supports, and their great teams of the past, and all that. I mean, I can get lost in that for all the time. That will always have an appeal, even if the game today isn't. It doesn't mean as much. It still means a lot, but it doesn't mean as much to me as it did. But the whole, the football in the broader sense,
Yeah.
And everything that comes with it, that will always be special for me.
Absolutely, 100%. You mentioned obviously going to San Siro. I want to get to that after this next bit towards the end, but I wanted to get what your thoughts are on VAR. I don't know if it's a bit of a board about talk, because I feel like it's obviously who I support, Liverpool, who are in the Premier League, and there's little incidents with it every week, and it gets talked about all the time on Sky Sports and that. It gets a little bit boring because what we've just talked about, none of that stuff gets talked about. The game doesn't get talked about, all the other things. But, Scottish football doesn't have it. And as a fan of a team that is in a league that has it, there's a big part of me that's like, I don't know if you guys even want to go down the route of having it, because it's been such a shit show. It may, and it probably will, and it has to get made to be better and smoother and all that. But what's your thoughts on it, probably from looking on the outside end of the whole thing?
Well, I mean, I'm not a fan at all. I just wouldn't have bothered. Didn't see any need. I was happy with goal line technology. I thought that's a simple change. That was pretty fluid. That's a simple matter of fact. Boom. We buzz on the arm. It's a goal. That's brilliant. We should have. It would be good to have that in Scotland. I'd accept that, but nothing else. I don't want anything else.
No.
First time I really kind of encountered VAR was that World Cup 2018.
Yeah.
And actually, it wasn't as bad during the World Cup as I expected it to be.
You're right. It was okay.
Just maybe they tried to hold back and not use it too much. But the English games I've watched this season, it's totally changed the game, and not for the better in any way. And I don't care
think so.
if they've got decisions right eventually. If it's taken a minute or 2 minutes, then it's just killing things. And I would scrap it, and I hope Scottish football never gets it. And it's one of the plus points in Scottish football at the moment is that it doesn't have it.
Like I understand and understood, and I still get what they're trying to bring it in to do, right? They're trying to make it fair, right? They're trying to get the right decision. But there's so much to the game of football that it takes, like we said, it for me personally, it takes the soul away. Like, it really takes the soul away. And the biggest thing about football is a goal for your team. And football shouldn't be 5-4. And it's great when we get those games and everyone wants those games. But football isn't and shouldn't be 5-4. Football is 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. Like that, it's hard to score a goal, right? And I went, speaking about going down to games and everything, I was fortunate enough, Jesus, man, I need to think now. But the season when Liverpool won it, I went down at Christmas that year anyway with Greg and Matthew, fortunate enough to go there. And Liverpool beat Wolves 1-0. And Sadio Mane scored the only goal. And Lallana scores. This is the only time I've been in a game with it. I don't know if you've been at a game in a ground with it yet, but the ball gets played over the top. Lallana shouldered it down to Mane, and Mane scored. And you're absolutely buzzing. And then all of a sudden, the rest blowing the whistle. And inside the stadium, it was one of those that took 3-4 minutes to get the decision. And everyone's on their phone trying to load Twitter up to see the videos on Twitter, you know what I mean? To be and it was this moment of me, Greg, and Matthew walked out the ground being like, that was shit. Like, it killed the moment. I'd rather have, if the ref got it wrong, I'd rather have the linesman flagged. And that was it. It really killed the moment of the goal. And certainly from us three being fans that don't get to go there a lot because it's extremely difficult to get there.
Yeah.
It took a big moment away of why you go to a game. So for me, that was when I was like, I don't think I can do this. Unless they can sort that out some way, which I don't see they can do, I'm not a fan.
No, that sounds dire. And that's what I would, you're right. You just want that. It's bad enough when you celebrate a goal and you suddenly look up and see the linesman's got his flag up. That was always being asked. But this, yeah, you see people are subdued in their celebrations because they're waiting for. And I was at the game. I'll get on to talk about this Milan derby, but that was one of the only 2 games I've been to where VAR's been in play.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, you notice that the fans were like cheering kickoff because that obviously marked
it was
point
over.
where you know
Yeah.
for a fact it's not going to get
Yeah.
chopped now. And I just thought, well, this is kind of new and a bit interesting, but it's also just shite. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. There were other things that were starting to annoy me about football, but VAR really is. I think has the potential to, to really get me disinterested in it, and I never thought that would be possible, that something could come along and do that. There's other factors as well, just interested in maybe a broader range of things these days, but yeah.
But no,
and there was a spell.
Yeah.
There was a spell here where the English games weren't on cable TV for a couple of years. It's just come back this season.
Okay.
And previously, had that been the case, I would still be going down to the pub and I'd be taking in a game,
yeah,
at least one game every week. But I just had no enthusiasm to do that, and part of that was VAR. I just didn't. I didn't feel it was worth the effort to go down and what it just wasn't the same. And various other things have played a part. I don't like the kind of standardised style of football that you see in England as well, which is everybody's trying to play it from the back. All the keepers are supposed to be kind of quarterbacks, and a lot of them are not that good at getting in the way of a moving ball.
Yeah,
which is a pretty key part of being a goalkeeper.
Yeah,
and yeah, it feels like it used to be gripping, and you loved going. a great Man U team would go down to West Ham or something like that, and and West Ham could rough them up, play them off the park. Wimbledon as well, stuff like that. There were ways to level things, but if everybody tries to play the same way, this is a bit of a tangent, then obviously the team with the best players is always going to come through. And I guess Guardiola is responsible to some extent of that. I mean, he's done a lot of good for football, and been responsible for some of the best football I've watched in my life in that Barcelona team.
Oh yeah.
But it's a shame that I think too many people have tried to copy him when they just don't have the tools to do it. I think you have to have absolute cream to work with for what he, which is the only job he's ever had, has been basically the team with the best resources in that league.
Yes.
So would he be able to pull that off for, we'll never find out, but for
we'll never know.
A mid-range English team or a mid-range Spanish team, I suspect not.
I always felt like I pursued the coaching for 8 years, and you just mentioned Pep, massive part and influence on why I wanted to stay in football. I knew I wasn't obviously going to be a player, so I went down the coaching path, and he was a huge influence on what I wanted to do. But I don't know whether are fortunate enough just to grow up playing in Scotland at not any decent level, but just playing the game of also understanding there's a lot more to it than playing nice football, which is great, which I wanted to do as a coach. Like, I wanted to have my goalkeeper play out the back and all these types of things, but there's almost like an arrogance in that, like, if you don't do it that way, then it's wrong. Whereas football has always been about debate. That's what it's always been about. It's a debate, and nothing's right or wrong. And it's turned into, if you don't do it this way, then it's wrong. And it's like, well, hold on, there's a million ways to play the game. And I remember Gary Neville a long time ago, before podcast became a big thing, and it probably wasn't even called a podcast. But do you know Guillaume Balaguer, the Spanish
Yeah.
So he did his own one, and he had Gary Neville on. This must be like 6 years ago now. It was a long time ago. And Neville summed it up perfectly. He was like, the great teams can do everything. They can play, but they can also match you, physically. Whatever's thrown at them in the game, they can adapt to and play. And my concern with these days is that, and I've seen it obviously in a different country, but I've done a little bit of coaching here too. And I get it, it's cool, but see people just try and copy and emulate this style that is, you have to understand that the manager, Pep Guardiola, was brought up and bred in that environment with that style. So he knows it's in him. He knows it inside out. And also all the players are brought through from the age of 7 years old to play that way. So when it clicks, it's fucking perfect and it's magic. And that's what we saw at Barca. And Pep's done it at City, don't get me wrong. He's done much in the same. But I agree with you. There's almost become like a snobbery and an arrogance of playing that way. And what it's also made, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here as well, but what it's also made other teams do in the Prem, which is making it not as enjoyable to watch. And when I say this to people, they go, oh, just because one of your teams are the team that are maybe struggling with this, and they are, but other teams just sit with 10 men behind the ball. And you're watching the game where a team's playing it side to side, and the other team is maybe trying to catch a team on the break. But let's be honest, a lot of teams are sitting in with 10 men to just try and get a 0-0. And I get it, and it's not right or wrong, but I don't know. There's just a lot of things I agree with you that's making me sometimes about the game. I'm like, I don't feel the same way about it at times.
Well, it just comes from the massive disparity, which is also the factor. We know for a Man City, Man City, Man U, these clubs with, incredible resources,
unlimited.
Some of them quite dubious, and how a team just gets up and the battle to finish 17th or that kind of thing. It's just, those games. Maybe this season's not a fair example because there have been a few shocks.
Yeah,
maybe it has been better, but certainly the trend had been that I'd noticed was that the minnows were just getting absolutely
smashed,
ripped apart. And I suppose Man U hit 9 the other week, but that was a bit of an odd one.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't want to be like a grumpy old guy who's just like saying, "Oh, it was always better in my day," because everybody always says that. But I think the general feeling is that it was better in the 90s. I mean, you talk about an Arsenal Man U game in the 90s. I was talking about this with a few mates the other week.
Yeah.
And that was box office. You wouldn't. For the world.
No.
The characters involved. There was quality, but there was a lot of spice about the games as well, and you knew it was going to be a scrap or there was going to be challenges flying in. Whereas now, you just don't have that edge to it. I don't think.
You've also, sorry, man. We've also become like everything's become a bit softer. So it's like I've had some incidents in America where you show up to a tournament and the rules are, well, there's no slide tackles, and I'm like, what? That's part of the game. Oh no, but someone might get hurt. Like we don't want them to get hurt. They can slide tackle after 12, and it's like, and I know for a fact that there's some. I don't think that's a rule in Scotland, but I know you can't header the ball now till 12 years old, and there's loads of things. I know there's a lot of scientific studies about that. I have no idea. I'm not qualified to speak on that. I'm sure there's some proof as to it's not a good thing, but there's just loads of little things happening now that's really starting to change the game. And one of the biggest ones for me is, do you know what annoys me a little bit, actually, Big A, to be honest, is watching these games, right? And you see these strikers and these players go in the box and they're diving, right? Whatever you want to call it, they're diving in the Premier League. And the players are getting pelters. And I'm sitting here saying to Matthew, I'm like, but VAR is making them do that, because if you get slightly touched in the box, it's a penalty. So if you're Raheem Sterling, who is fantastic at turning people inside out and he's so quick that it's so hard to deal with him, then you're just gonna run into someone and make it look like a foul, and 9 out of 10 times you're gonna get a penalty. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go back too much to VAR, but yeah, it does definitely encourage
Yeah.
that kind of behaviour. It was an accident last night, the Barca PSG game, and I think it was Piqué got, not much of a wee brush in the face with an elbow, and went down in the box and just stayed down for, basically until, make sure he stayed down. It was quite obvious that it wasn't that bad, and stayed down for as long as possible. He was clearly fishing for a bit of VAR and a red card, and but with Barca being at home, there's every chance he's probably quite used to getting those kind of decisions. Barca and Real do get some incredibly favourable calls in their favour at home, but yeah, in terms of the heading, I think that's a good thing that's banned, because, well, from the documentaries I've watched, and you hear, Alan Shearer is pretty big on this, Chris Sutton as well, and yeah, it sounds like the damage is not done from like just hitting the ball, but it's the practice of doing it, 100 times, 150 times a day.
That's true.
I mean, you can imagine if and it's not got anything to do with the weight of the ball.
Yeah.
People say, oh, the balls used to be like, medicine balls. But it's just that repeated action of bashing your head against something for, 100, 150 times in a day.
Yep.
Let alone all the other aerial collisions. Now, are you going to be able to outlaw that from the game entirely? Not really, unless it, have to change drastically. But I think that is a good thing at the young level.
It's not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's not. It's. I don't disagree with you, because I'm sure that there's, like you say, I get it, but just from my experience as a coach, it changes the game, because I used to play against some teams, probably predominantly. You used to play against like the Hispanic teams, and they would be quite direct and just kind of kick the ball, and it's 7v7 in a tight pitch, and they kick in, it's in the air and it's bouncing, and it was a disaster. Like, a kid can't deal with it, and I know that kind of teaches them. This is what I mean. It's going to change the game, because now the kid has to learn how to deal with that without being able to header the ball, which, it's not a bad thing, but it just, like you say, I think sometimes you can get attached to things that are just like part of the game, and you get emotionally attached. But from what you were saying there, that made me think about it a little bit differently, that I guess it kind of makes sense for them not to maybe do it at a young age. Yeah.
No, it's going to seem odd, but what they probably should do is have a head height rule until, if they can't hit it, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know there's a fine line between player safety and player safety and maintaining the
game,
fundamental parts of the game.
Yeah. I agree, man.
It's already changed pretty massively in the last 20, 30 years. Whether we'll get to a stage where heading is outlawed in football, I don't know. 100 years' time, I think that's completely possible. You see the way
I do.
Rugby's kind of reviewing itself as well. They've got big issues with all the head traumas that they have in that sport.
Yep.
I just don't know. I mean, are you going to get to our sport's going to hit a bit of a dead end, and they'll have to completely reinvent themselves? I'm not sure. I think
possible.
That's one for for decades down the road, really. I think would be fairly similar for most of our lifetime. But
absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised if it, to some people it'll look like the game is being softened, but if it's making it safer, and all of our favorite, our legendary favorite players are not getting dementia, a relatively young age, then that has to be a good thing. No,
you're right, man. You're definitely not wrong there. Last kind of question I want to ask you on Scottish football, and then I'm going to kind of give you a quick fire of about 4 or 5 questions, and then we can wrap it up. But what's your thoughts been on Steven Gerrard at Rangers? You know, he's gone in there. It's his first job. You know, it's a huge club. It's a massive club. He's obviously played for a huge club, but you know, he's on course to have one of the best, you know, seasons a champion has had in Scotland, without a doubt. I think they're going to rack up some points. So it'll be quite impressive if they get beat a few times between now and the end of the season. But yeah, what's been your thoughts on him, like watching it from afar?
Well, first of all, I have to confess I've got a bet with your cousin.
Oh, do you?
My bet was that Gerrard would never win a trophy with Rangers.
Okay.
I won't tell you what the amount
Interesting.
was, but it was a reasonable. I was pretty confident, put it that way. And
Interesting.
yeah, I think I'm pretty close to being. The good news is that he only accepts payment in person, so
Good.
I should be able to avoid him for the rest of my life. And
certainly for the next wee while, anyway.
Pandemic's come in handy.
Yeah.
No, in terms of Gerrard, well, I thought it was a dubious appointment in the first place. Well, you know, rookie manager, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, but they usually say that these, you know, guys who are legendary players, you know, tend not to make the best managers because they don't know how to work with players who are vastly inferior to them.
Yeah.
It's obviously what Gerrard was going to find coming to a Scottish club, even if it's one of the big ones. I think, well, obviously the European form has been pretty steady and impressive throughout, and that, as somebody who doesn't want Rangers to do well, has always been a concern.
Mm-hmm.
And then but domestically, they would somehow bottle games, or they would somehow drop points. We just really wouldn't expect them to, and even it's his first season. Aberdeen finished above them, I think, but there was always a gradual improvement. And I was saying, I noticed that I've got a few Celtic mates. And obviously, when Rodgers left, you felt that this is going to be, unless Celtic get a proper replacement in here, which, you know, all respect to Neil Lennon, they didn't do, and Celtic fans were petrified when, well, not petrified, but they were
concerned.
They were concerned when he got the job, and as it turns out, they were right to be that way. And Rangers have just gradually been able to build up a pretty steady squad. It's now quite familiar. You know, good signings in the big positions. And yeah, he's improved. I mean, a guy like Ryan Jack, when he was at Aberdeen, good player, one of our better ones, but not our best player by any means. And the improvement that he's brought out of him is, you know, to what extent Gerrard's responsible for that, probably quite a lot. And that is one example. He's had to deal with an incredibly difficult player in Morelos, who has let him down countless times. Seems to have just about got the edge on that one now. And yeah, I mean, he's had a lot of money to spend. I think it's taken him longer than it should have done to be, you know, to be a proper challenge for Celtic.
Interesting.
And he was probably a bit fortunate with the amount of time he got. Some people think, and I probably agree, that the pandemic came at a perfect time for him. But they just lost to Hearts in the Cup. Mm-hmm. They dropped all sorts of points after this trip to Dubai. They'd drawn with us. They'd lost to Hamilton. They'd drawn with St Johnstone. They were spilling points right and left, and just absolutely surrendered the title pretty much to Celtic. As much as Rangers fans might argue that they still had 2 Old Firm games to go.
Yeah.
Could have turned it round, but you know, there was nothing to suggest that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
There was definitely unrest among the fans. Had that season gone to a natural finish, Celtic win the league by 10 points, 12 points, whatever. Rangers were out of both cups by that point. We weren't going to win anything. That would have been another season for Gerrard without silverware. I'm not sure he would have survived that. And obviously with the big big bad 10 in a row on the horizon for Celtic. They were willing to do anything to stop that from happening. And I think it would have been a decision to make. And I got the feeling Gerrard was struggling with Morelos at that time in particular. He was late back from international break, I think, or time back in Colombia. And I think there was an element of, there was a stroke of luck there, I think, just a bit. This gave him a chance. It also galvanised the Rangers' support because they could point to this, tainted title that Celtic got, and they could claim they're being kind of fucked over by the authorities or whatever, and that kind of, so there was this togetherness, I think, among Rangers fans that wasn't, and the team that wasn't there before the pandemic. They were starting to lose faith in Gerrard, I think, quite obviously.
Yeah, I remember some people saying that to me, 100%.
So yep. I think that's unfortunate. But yeah, this season, he's as much as Celtic have absolutely blown themselves up, Rangers have been relentless. I don't find it remarkable what they've achieved. They've huge advantage over every other team in the league apart from Celtic. Financially, both teams should really be skittling all of us. When Aberdeen are the next best, or us and Hibs are the next best, then it shows you how. And the rest of the league, it's a bit of a battle for survival. Although there's not that many teams that can take points off the Old Firm realistically now, or shouldn't be. There's a lot taking them off Celtic, but I think he's. I don't think he's got until Christmas time. I don't think the points return was any better than the previous season. He's done what should have been done. I think the European form has been excellent, worryingly good actually.
Yeah, it has been. He's separated the two competitions well.
I'm not sure who's going to knock them out actually, but yeah. It's. I think it's at the point now. If he wins the league, I think he'll probably stay for another season. But yeah, it'll be a successful mission now that he's got this league. I mean, losing out to St Mirren in the cup when Celtic were already out, that was a good chance to win silver there.
Yeah, for sure.
There's still black marks against him. I'd say overall it's probably like a 7.5 out of 10 job for him. But
fair.
In terms of, I think he'll stick around for another season, and I think Liverpool job will be there for him as long as it doesn't go completely belly up with Rangers. Yes. Whether he goes straight there, I think he's probably, because of his playing credentials, he could go straight to Liverpool. It's just like that. I mean, it's like Solskjaer's got the job at Man U, and how I suppose Lampard did his time at Derby. Just like Lampard, these guys get fast tracked because of their status.
Massively.
And that could easily happen with Gerrard.
There's a good video on YouTube of Gerrard when he was coaching the Liverpool under 23s, I think it was at the time, with Klopp, and he's just talking to Klopp about managing and stuff, and Klopp says to him, it's almost near on impossible to do these days, but spend your first few years as best as you can, like out the limelight. I was fortunate to Klopp's point of view, like mine back in the day wasn't a big deal. I could make so many mistakes that, if this day and age right now he's at Rangers, the mistakes you make, or we've seen with Lampard, right? Lampard's a better example because it didn't go well for him, is when you make those mistakes, you're not given the luxury of the time to fix it when you take that big a job. So no, that's an interesting way to look at it, because I guess, in my circle, I've got a lot of Liverpool and Rangers people, right? So it's a lot of positivity and all that type of thing. So it's interesting you say about 7.5 out of 10, but from what you said, I wouldn't disagree with that, right? Because he should be doing well. He should be one of the top teams. So yeah, that's interesting. I don't think you're far off for that, man, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's just, didn't really put much of a challenge into Celtic initially. Only one cup final, which he should have won, to be fair, against Celtic.
Yeah.
So I think there was And yeah, European forms would be good. I think that's about right. But
Do
yeah, I
you?
mean, wins the league and gets to like semi-finals of
Yeah,
Europa League or something, then you're starting to think it's more like
yeah,
8.5.
yeah. No, I agree with you, man. I agreed. I think he was one thing that people don't get these days, and maybe like you said, the pandemic come along may have helped him in timing, but he got a bit of back end. They backed him through, moments. Again, like you said, going for 10 in a row. They've backed him and kind of stuck with him and not kind of hit the panic button, and it's worked for them, right? They're absolutely no doubt ending that 9 in a row, aren't they? There's no way
Oh,
the
obviously,
Celtic come back from that.
been a matter of time since about
Yeah,
October.
it's been a long time, man.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. Right, so I'll kind of wrap this up with a few questions for you, and I'll kind of let you get on your way, man. I've got I've got 4 or 5 questions for you. You can make it as short or as long as you want. But my first question for you is, what is the best game that you've ever seen live? Because I know you've been to a lot of games, and you can define that however you want to define best.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
tricky one. I mean, I've mentioned a couple, which was the Barca 5, Sevilla 4
Yep.
up there, here. I mean, just the whole thing that came with it. That was special. The Sterling Morton definitely in the argument. That was an absolute classic. And being there with mates, and especially these days when I only see these guys maybe once or twice a year, to have that kind of experience with them, that was special. But then the last game of football I was at, as it stands, was the Inter Milan, AC Milan derby at the San Siro. And at the time, we were told that was going to be the last one at the San Siro, but I don't think that hasn't actually been the case. That never really bothered me that much. But I mean, again, meeting up with old mates, having a great time in Italy, a few beers, bit of wine, good food, walking around this, beautiful city and stuff, and yeah, it was a late evening kickoff, so we started kind of walking out towards the ground and stopping for a beer here and there, and met up with an old mate from uni who lives there now, and he was kind of showing us about and took us to the ground, and just the whole. People always said to me, they say this about the new camp as well, which I've not been to, but they always said to me, San Siro, people say, "Oh, it's a shithole," or it's. I just never ever believed that, and I knew I knew that people that were saying that just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely how I felt when I walked into the ground with Cudge, which I walked into the ground with, and we've been to a million games together. Things like East Stirling, Dumbarton on a Tuesday night, or Edinburgh City v Spartans up the back of Meadowbank. And some good games, but this was just the other end of the spectrum. This was kind of what you always dream about. Walking out there 10 minutes before kick-off, we were at the right up the top, right up in the gods, but the view is still good. I like watching games up high up. I don't care about being way up there. I think I love it up there.
Good view,
and, yeah, and you had the banners at both ends, and they were just kind of, the Milan fans would unveil a banner, and it was pretty explicit stuff, and then the Inter guys would have their own one, fireworks going off, and it was just absolutely raucous. I really wasn't expecting it. I didn't think it was still like this. I think if you went to a Liverpool Man U or whatever, I'm not convinced you would get the same level of ferocity.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah,
really, that's pleasantly surprised me. And
good.
That, even if it had been a shite game thereafter, a drab 0-0, then, and it was Ibrahimovic was coming back from Milan as well, playing against Inter, and Inter fans were giving him abuse. So it's also, and if Inter won, they went top of the league. It was just all sorts of.
It was a big game, yeah.
And Milan went 2-0 up. Their fans have bounced 2-0 at half time. Ibrahimovic is winding up everyone. Place is just going nuts. And in the second half, Inter come back. Some great goals. Lukaku gets the fourth one in the end, and they win 4-2. And the fans are absolutely bouncing on the way out, and we were kind of joining in with a chance, not really knowing what they're singing, but it was just euphoric, and I couldn't
I bet.
I don't think that as an experience being with. I mean, it's a shame not to mention the game I was at with my brother and my dad, because they've been a huge part of my football going life.
Yeah, yeah.
But if I had to pick one game, it would be the last game I was at.
Class, man. Class. The next two questions may be that answer too, so you can just say so if it is. But best stadium you've ever been to?
Yeah, I mean San Siro would definitely be up there, because when I go to a stadium, it's not just it's not just the the bricks and the mortar. It's what's happened at that stadium before. It's games you've watched on the TV at this ground. So you look at the San Siro, and there's classic goals from the World Cup Italia '90 that you've seen before. There's Champions League finals that have been played here.
Yeah.
Growing up watching Italia '90, great Milan teams, quite exciting Inter teams as well. You've watched so much of your kind of football education has come from this ground.
Yeah.
So that was a big part. But also, so other two grounds that would be in contention would be probably just one in contention, really. Dortmund. I went there. The downside to Dortmund was the ground was great. It was like 70,000 fans there. It wasn't full, but Dortmund had a poor team at this time. It was about.
Okay.
We're on the way back from watching Bayern Munich Aberdeen. We somehow got to the last 32 UEFA Cup, and went out there with my dad and my brother, and that was a great experience. I mean, we got pumped 5-1. But
yeah.
And the Allianz Arena in Munich is that is a great ground, but it's a bit of a it lacks a bit of soul for me. And,
okay.
And Bayern as a support are they're a bit. I feel a bit less inclined to get behind them than I would like Inter or even
I get
Dortmund.
what you're saying. Yeah.
But Dortmund was an amazing ground. We were just let down a little bit by they were playing Hansa Rostock, a kind of lesser like team, yo-yo club, and finished 1-0. It wasn't a very memorable game. I was there.
Okay.
We lapped it up, and going to a game in Germany is a great experience, even without a good match. But that would be probably the other one. I mean, I'll
class.
Yeah, I won't go on and list loads and loads.
Yeah.
In terms of English grounds, I would say, I think that both of the Liverpool grounds were impressive when I went there. I love Goodison. I thought I saw them win 5-0 against Norwich. That was the year they won the FA Cup. Duncan Ferguson was playing.
Oh,
the
class.
place was just absolutely bouncing. That was really old-fashioned ground. People are really sound, and that was a brilliant experience. And then Liverpool was a few years later. That was when Houllier was a manager. I think Heskey and Owen, Patrick Berger scored a screamer against Spurs. Finished 2-0. And you've got the Hillsborough stuff outside.
Yeah.
I think it was around the anniversary of Hillsborough as well, so they had the minute silence. So it just all felt very
good time to go.
Historic. So your experience wasn't just the 90 minutes. It was just so much more than that, and you really kind of rich experience. And so
class,
anyway,
man.
There's a few to throw in there.
Quality. My last two questions for you. Best player you've ever seen live?
Ooh. I mean, I saw Messi here play for Barcelona in that Super Cup.
Okay.
And yeah, he played well on the night. He scored 2 free kicks. But that he would be the best player I've seen live. Whether it's not probably the best performance I've seen live.
Okay.
In terms of best performance, I'm not really sure.
I'm sure Messi's at the top of a lot of people's lists. He's that good.
Yeah. So I wanted to
try and think of
I wanted to come at you with a more obscure answer, to be honest.
I know.
But that probably is
fair.
I mean, saw Pirlo playing against Scotland, and he was pretty special to watch.
Class, loved Pirlo.
I don't know. I think
Hey, if that's the one that sticks out, that's the one that sticks out. That's it.
Yeah,
That's it,
yeah, it
man.
would have to be. It would have to be.
Fair, man. Last question. Who's your favorite player of all time and why? So, I mean, doesn't have to be an Aberdeen player, just your favorite player of all time and why.
Um, well, probably have to separate it into two. I mean, favorite Aberdeen player of all time would be Ian Jess, who probably a bit before your time.
Yeah.
Forward attacking midfielder who was just phenomenal talent. Had a bad injury when he was in his early 20s, but at that point he was in the Scotland squad, and there was talk of him getting a move to Serie A. He was, big clubs down south. After that, he was never quite the same player, but still had moments of real quality. And that was just when I was getting into football. He was my idol, and any Aberdeen fan of my age, I'd be very surprised if they said anyone else than
Interesting.
him. If you go on YouTube and have a wee look at some of his goals, he scored absolute screamers. I had a habit of scoring a lot of them against Rangers as well, which was always a good.
Nice, yeah.
And,
I'll look him up.
You should, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the spelling of Ian is a bit different. It's Eoin rather than.
Oh, okay. I would have. Yeah, that's
When
interesting.
he went there to play in England, he played for Coventry, and the commentator was calling him Owen Jess.
Owen Jess. Because of the spelling.
Well, I think in Ireland, that's possibly how you actually pronounce it. Anyway, never mind. In terms of best player, you see best player of all time, as in like before I was born.
Well, no, I mean, I would say like who since you've been into it has been your favorite player.
I must say, I really, really loved watching Berbatov.
Good choice.
I love a player, that's clearly got this really advanced football brain that doesn't, isn't running and bashing around, and just it looks kind of lazy, but it's just, I thought at times he was just so beautiful to watch. And he was quick when he could be arsed, or when he could be arsed, but when the situation called for it, he could run. Loved watching him. Obviously, Zidane, Ronaldinho, the Brazilian Ronaldo when he was coming through. They were just absolutely thrilling as well. So they would be main ones. I also loved that Czech side that should have won Euro 2004 with
Jan Koller and stuff.
Big Jan Koller up front. Yeah. I was not an all-time player, but I like that side. And Nedved was right up there. He was an outstanding midfielder.
He was.
He won the Ballon d'Or. He deserved a major international honour, which unfortunately
he did.
Czechs fell short. But
Jan Koller played for Dortmund, right?
He did, yeah.
For a little bit, yeah. He played for Dortmund for a little bit. I remember him, man. He was a big player on Pro Evo back in the day. Jan Koller, he was a big player on Pro Evo, man.
I used to bore people rigid by always going them. And,
I bet. Class, man. Class. Well, look, Big A, I think that's it, man. I think that's all I've got for you. I know it's been a bit of a decent chat, man. So I'll let you get going as well. But appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm doing this for honestly my own enjoyment, personally during lockdown. But other people seem to be getting enjoyment out of it too from listening to it. So yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
No worries.
We'll if you don't mind, even when I end this here, if you don't mind, we'll just stay on for a minute or two and have a wee chat, and then I'll let you go. But thank you again.
Sure, mate. Sure.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right.